where there's like the weird lag between between what's happening in the room, what's happening on the street. Okay, welcome everyone to what I believe is the 23rd We Move session. Hello to you on the stream, hello to people in the room. Today we are, well, I will be shortly handing over to Grace Savage, who we are excited to have to host in this space today. He's going to be sharing basically lessons and little gems from her career as a beatboxer and an independent artist, as well as giving us some demonstrations. So we're going to get some music today. So in case you've never come across Grace before, I'm sure you probably have, but just in case, Grace is a multifaceted artist. She's 4 times UK Beatbox Champion, and basically has a style all of her own. She's been picked up by Radio 1 and Radio 6 Music. She was shortlisted for Best Songwriter and Best Solo Act at the Unsigned Music Awards, and recently appeared showcasing her skills on Redbull UK's online songwriting competition, The Cut. And in 2021, she wrote a score for a short film. A short film? A short film. Okay. That's not frame. And won 2 awards for Best Sound and Music for the LGBT Feedback Film Festival, and Best Score at the Swindon International Independent Film Festival. And it was a BBC commissioned film called Her and Her, and I'm sure that she will allude to that in more detail soon, but we're very lucky to have her. And I'm now just going to hand over to Grace.
Smooth transition. I should have asked you this before maybe in soundcheck, but if I beatbox with this little mic, does it come through?
I will use it when you do.
But if I do it now as a test, like, just to get an acoustic kind of vibe.
Yeah, that's
It's not peaking or anything.
No.
Great. That's how I'm going to start. And then I'll mosey on over to this microphone. Okay. Fall into the floor, floor. Fall into the floor, floor. Your true colours can't fool me no more, more. My juicer. Fall into the floor. Your true colours can't fool me no more, more. My juicer. Guess I should've known. Look in your eyes could turn me into stone. I'm not petrified. Venom on your tongue darkens your smile, but I'm not gonna run, 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 run. My juicer. Fall into the floor. Your true cup slush. Can't fool me no more. My views up. Falling to the floor. Falling to the floor. Falling to the floor. My juicer. Guess I should've known, no. And the crowd goes wild. Hi. Hello, my name is Grace Savage. As you mentioned, I'm a 4 times UK Beatbox Champion. I'm a singer, songwriter, looper, voiceover artist, workshop facilitator and occasional actor. Freelancers understand, we have to have many slashes to our names. So this isn't a particularly techie talk, it's going to be more of a story, and I'm going to tell you my musical journey of how I went from a shy bedroom beatboxer with a fear of singing and no formal musical training to becoming a beatbox champion and a singer-songwriter with an ironing board full of machines. I don't have an ironing board with me today, but I normally perform on an ironing board. It's just my thing. And I'm going to timestamp certain moments throughout the talk with musical routines, so you can hear the progression that I've made from singular voice, as you heard just then, to fully produced tracks over the past 18 years. So yes, I have been beatboxing for 18 years and performing live on stages for the past 14. And over that time, I have slowly and organically evolved as an artist and a person, gradually adding more and more into my live performances, getting braver with using my voice, increasing my technical abilities and purchasing larger ironing boards to accommodate my ever-expanding setup. I started off with a tiny mini ironing board and now I've gone full board. So I'm 2 decades deep and I'm still learning, I'm still experimenting, I'm trying to push myself and do things that make me uncomfortable as often as possible. So being an artist is a lifelong journey that I've committed to. There are many ups and many downs. The highs can be really high, the lows can be really low. Sometimes things move really fast, sometimes they're slower. My wife and I have an 8-month-old baby and she has been working full time, not the baby, my wife. So currently I'm very much in the slower phase, which can be frustrating at times, but I'm learning to accept it as a moment in time as part of the longer journey. And as I get older, I am learning more and more that the important bit is the journey. The process is where the joy is found, where the growth happens. I've learned not to focus and place so much emphasis on the final goal or end point or number of streams or followers, and I'm in no hurry to be famous, to become a TikTok star or find a quick fix. I'm in a position in which I make a living from my work and art full time, and I have the freedom as an independent artist to work at my own pace, to my own deadlines, and that, I have come to realise, is the definition of success for me. I have no label, no manager, no booking agent, it's just little old me. And I got here by continuing to push myself, by hustling, doing hundreds of low-paid and free gigs up and down the country in the early days, but mostly by throwing myself in at the deep end and learning on the job. Also by being a nice person, I think, being professional, working hard and keeping my dreams big but my expectations realistic. I'm still a work in progress, but hopefully by sharing my journey and showing you how I got to this point of my self-defined success, you guys can find some inspiration in it. So each section of this talk will focus on a part of my journey in which I had to overcome a particular fear. First, my fear of beatboxing in public, then my fear of singing in public, and finally my fear of using technology on stage. So we all have to start somewhere. Cue dreamy music and smoke. So here we go. If we go way back to my pre-beatboxing days, my obsession with music really started at 8 years old with the Spice Girls. Yes, can I get a whoop? Yeah! Obviously, I had to be ginger. I fell in love with them, as many primary school kids did around the world in the 90s, and they inspired me to start my own girl band called Flash. Catchy. I would hold auditions in the school playground at break time. It was very serious. I had a songwriting book and I started working on my dream of becoming a real-life Spice Girl. But in reality, every time I had to sing in public, I was terrified. I loved writing songs, I hated singing, but I wanted more than anything to be a singer. So I didn't come from a musical family. My mum was the manager of a cleaning company, my dad an optician salesman, and my brothers ended up working in construction. So we were a sports family, really. I was the only ginger and the only one who wanted to sing and dance. So I constantly asked my mum if I was adopted. Apparently not. So skip forward 6 years, I'm 14 years old and I'm introduced to beatboxing. One of my best friends, Belle, aka Bellatrix, who is now a world beatbox champion, she had started beatboxing in the school assemblies. Around that same time, I saw a famous beatboxer called Razel perform live in a club in Exeter, and I quickly became obsessed. I had always imitated sounds, doors creaking, kettles boiling, people's accents, and I loved hip-hop music. So beatboxing was like the perfect combination of those two things, and I picked it up very naturally. I had found a way to use my voice in an emotive, musical and expressive way that very cleverly avoided me having to sing. So I practiced every day in my bedroom, in the shower, walking around town. I officially had the beatbox bug. You either get it or you don't. I was quite an obsessive, strange child anyway, and most beatboxers I know have this innate kind of obsessive nature. You kind of can't become a beatboxer without it. The trouble is, Belle was one of my best friends, and we were teenagers, so it would have been friendship suicide to admit to her that I was also practicing beatboxing. It was very much Belle's thing, so I didn't want to step on any toes, so I kept it to myself for a couple of years. Belle moved from Devon to Bristol for A-levels, and I continued practicing in secret. Kick drum, hi-hat, and snare. So I told you there was going to be some audience participation. Don't worry, it's not just two of you. I can see some people lurking in the background. So this is where I'm going to teach you the basics of beatboxing. There's lots of space between us, so it's quite a spitty thing, but this is a COVID-friendly space. Okay, so hi-hat is the easiest one. It's just the letter T, T, T. So everyone just say T. T, great. Take away the E and it's T, T. Great, you can put more breath behind it, so it's T with an S on the end, or you can make it T, 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 really tight by increasing the pressure of your tongue on the roof of your mouth. Change the shape of your mouth. There you go. That's a hi-hat. And then we've got the snare, which is using your diaphragm, and that is basic K snare. Again, change the shape of your mouth. And you get that lovely saliva bubbling at the back of your throat. That gives you a nice resonance on your K snare. Great. Those are the two easy sounds. So we've got you can do that. Now we have to add the kick drum, which is a little bit more difficult, but essential. And that is this. So I always tell people to pull this face. It's kind of like if you're a posh person, that's how you talk. You know, it's all sort of mouth slightly down, tense at the side, and then just bottom lip slightly out, and just push out the letter P. The more your bottom lip is out, the bassier it sounds. Yeah, if there's too much tension, it'll sound like this, which you don't want. If it's too relaxed, it's like that. So it's kind of a mixture between tense and relaxed, which is a really, really bad way of explaining it. So, nice. You're not going to get it straight away, guys. Okay, so Belle had learned from some other teenage boys who were beatboxing in our little town in Devon. And I learned from one of them too. In fact, one of the first rhythms I learned was from one of these beatboxers, my mate's boyfriend. We were on a beach, and while everyone else swam in the sea, I sat and obsessed over it until it was perfect. It was the Kenny Mohammed wind technique, and it sounds like this. And then you replace the snares at the end with a gap or a chat. So I'm going to teach it to you now. That's what you wanted to hear, isn't it? So I've got this handy little flip chart here. So put it. Let's just do the first bit. Surely know those. Yeah. Try and have less breath so it's not. It's more. Your throat is kind of closed off. So no air is actually coming out. So I'm going to do the next section in a different colour. So the next bit is catchy. If you can read that. Yeah, and really emphasis on that snare. Great, so put it together and we go 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, man. Okay, so this is the last bit, which is the hardest bit. Again, it's just the same thing repeated. Put it, cat. Oh, done that classic thing of starting really big and then getting small. So the last bit is. Can you read that? So it's PTK. Again, loads of emphasis on the snare. Great. Has anyone passed out yet? No. Okay, so all together it is. And this is quite advanced. I'll just throw it at you. Nice, nailed it. So that is the wind technique. You did nail it. You did nail it. I mean, I suppose I could quickly. Okay, if I was to do that with the outward K snare, how do you think I'm breathing? So if I go, in fact, I'm not going to. Yeah, I'm giving away my secrets. How do you think I'm breathing? Is the question. On the snare. Exactly, in on the snare, yes. Normally I ask that to primary school kids and they're like, through your nose, through your gills. Well, no, you're adults. Yes, it is on the K snare inwards. It's called an inward snare, which is just a lovely phrase. So if everyone says clever, but really emphasize the at the back of your throat, clever, and just do the cl. And now just the. So it's a very fat bit at the back of your tongue against the roof of your mouth at the back, kind of tickly. So that's outwards. And keep your tongue there and just breathe in. Kind of like a Darth Vader impression. Out, in. And you should feel the air sort of rushing at the side of your tongue. That's the right face. It should be this. Beatboxing's not attractive. Okay. So then, basically, what you do is you can balance your breath constantly. You never run out of breath. So when I go, I've got rid of my breath. Now I get it back. So I've got my breath back. Then I get rid of it. And then it's a balance like that. But when you first start learning, you will find you're taking so much breath and your shoulders are up here and you're like, ugh. You learn to relax eventually. And there we go. All that beatboxing, I need some water. Hang on. So that is the Kenny Mohammed wind technique. So I'm going to give you a very, very brief history of beatboxing because I feel like I should. It's necessary, but I'll keep it short. So beatboxing comes from black culture. It is the fifth element of hip hop. It started in New York in the 1980s, and it was started by guys like Kenny Mohammed, the Fat Boys, Biz Markie, and it comes from the art of mimicking drum machines, also known as beatbox machines. So if the rappers couldn't afford a beatbox machine or the batteries ran out, the human voice would do it instead. That's why it's sometimes called the human beatbox machine, which has now been shortened to just beatbox. So it had a big moment in the 80s. It was the birth of beatboxing. It was very popular. And then it got a bit lost and a bit uncool in the 90s, and it was seen as quite gimmicky and basic for a while. Until Rahzel came along. And in the early noughties, along with Justin Timberlake, do we all remember that song? Boom-ts, 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 gonna rock your body. Everyone was like, oh my God, beatboxing. And it became cool again. But Rahzel made it cool again because he was pushing boundaries. He took it from the basic 80s kick and snare, that kind of stuff, to be the first beatboxer to sing and beatbox at the same time. That was his catchphrase. He's going to do it at the same time. So his famous song was If Your Mother, which I think is a cover of someone else anyway, but it's If Your Mother Only Knew, with the beats. If your mother only knew, if your mother only knew, and then he'd add a bass on top of that, which I cannot do. But also, he was the first to beatbox drum and bass music. So it was all like hip hop, and then he came along and went. And everyone was like, wow, I've never seen people fill that much space in the gaps. And no one had heard anyone beatbox like that before. Also, beatboxing changes and evolves as musical genres evolve. So drum and bass came around, then it was dubstep, and everyone went from that to like halftime. And that was like the cool thing. And then trap music, everyone's doing like complicated hi-hat stuff. So as I mentioned earlier, I saw Rahzel perform in Exeter when I was 14 years old. I snuck in with my fake ID, and my mind was blown. I was already beatboxing a little bit, but seeing it on stage with a massive sound system and the power of just one voice to move a whole crowd, that was the moment I became really focused in wanting to master it. So back then there was no such thing as professional beatboxers. Except for the handful of American legends that I've mentioned, it wasn't plausible to want to grow up to be a beatboxer like it is now. So this was just something I was doing out of pure passion and love. There was no motive involved or ambition for it to lead to anything other than just having an infatuation and wanting to master a skill, which is a nice thought. So from ages 14 to 18, I was purely a bedroom beatboxer. I was terrified to do it in front of anyone. I finally admitted to Belle that I was practicing beatboxing when we were 16, drunkenly in a pub toilet, and they were over the moon. They gave me some techniques to practice, and so I learned from Belle, from other beatboxers in my town, and also from tutorials on this one website called humanbeatbox.com. This is before YouTube existed. So I put my first video on YouTube aged 18, and that was essentially my first public performance. I got my first taste of internet trolls too, and then I went to uni in Leeds to study theatre. I got my first ever payment from beatboxing from an American TV show who wanted to use it in, wanted to use my YouTube video. And they said they were going to send me a check in the mail for $200, and I was like, no way, that's never going to happen. Well, in fact, I probably didn't even think it was a scam because scams weren't as prevalent back then. So I signed all the forms, gave all my information out, and they sent me $200. So that was my first payment, my first gig. And at 19, I performed my first gig on stage. It was with Belle. She came up from Bristol, I went down from Leeds, and we did a 5-minute set for Ox Jam at a pub in Derby called the Five Lamps. And I remember being so nervous, I had pins and needles shooting down my finger. I don't know if anyone else gets that, but I'm really nervous. I yawn and I get pins and needles. Strange. So I got the first one out of the way, and from then on, I started doing open mic nights around Leeds while I was at uni to get more stage experience. So from 2007 to 2013, I did loads and loads of little gigs. People started to hear about me and book me for more gigs, and I increased my set length from 5 minutes up to a full 15-minute routine of purely beatbox. So it was just me and a microphone. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to give you a flavour of what that was. This particular routine was inspired by Razel's catchphrase, "at the same time." So I'm going to do 4 layers at the same time. Layer 1. Layer 2. 1. 2. 3. 2. 3. 4. 4. Bring it on. Thank you. Got a bit carried away there. Did an extra little routine. Hey, so in 2011, I entered my first beatbox battle. There was no women's category in existence yet, so that year I was the only female to enter, and I was petrified. It's quite a macho, high-energy, aggressive space to enter as a young woman, but I knew it was something I wanted to experience, and battling is a good way to make a name for yourself as a beatboxer. So I went in with no expectations, and I ended up winning my first battle against the boy. I lost in the next round, but that was enough to give me a huge confidence boost moving forward. So 2012 and 2013, they introduced a female category, which doesn't exist anymore, and I won both years. And the other two titles come from when Belle and I joined forces. Everyone always wanted us to battle each other, but we never did. We said, let's join forces and beat the guys instead, and we did with our duo project called Bird, B-U-R-D, in 2015 and 2016. We made beatbox history as the first non-male team in the world to enter a championship and the first to win twice. So back to 2012, I'm 23 years old and I start to get bored of just doing solo beatbox routines. The optimum time before an average audience, this is like not beatbox geeks, the average time before an average audience gets bored of just beatbox, I think, is about 15 minutes. It's kind of the sweet spot, and I was starting to get booked for 30-minute slots that I couldn't fill. So I needed to add something new to my live show, and that's when I got my first loop station. It wasn't this one, it was the much clunkier, I can't remember what it was, the RC something. Does anyone remember?
RC1 or RC2?
With the really heavy pedals for guitarists, yeah. It wasn't designed for vocalists, so it was like, I had to really punch them in. But that was my first loop station. So I started doing loops and experimenting with singing over my beats, not just slotting in vocal melodies sort of in between my beatbox routines. I actually used my beats as a backing track and sang over the top. So I started with covers, which is always a great way to learn as a musician. So I'm going to perform for you the first ever thing that I composed on the loop station. It's only comprised of 3 beatbox sounds and 1 bass note, so it's just P, T and K. And it is a cover of a cover of a cover. I'm covering Ben Pearce's version of What I Might Do, but I know that I must remember what the original song is. Somebody Google it. Hey, hey. Here we go. Knew just what I had to be when I heard you say what you said to me. To every dude inside, look like you're working up an appetite for the night. Check it. By then I just sat at the back, peeping you out the way you act. It was drinking time, getting out of line and then taking you back to your place. All is well and all is cool. Stay in your place, don't be no fool. Get along alright, little like the type that would try to fight. Best off being a friend to me. You don't want to offend me, better play it cool. Don't know what I might do. Knew just what I had to be when I heard you say what you said to me. To every dude inside, look like you're working up an appetite for the night. Check it. By then I just sat at the back, peeping you out the way you act. It was drinking time, getting out of line and I'm taking you back to your place. All is well and all is cool. Stay in your place, don't be no fool. Get along alright, little like the type that would try to fight. Best off being a friend to me. You don't want to offend me, but it play it cool. Don't know what I might do. You don't know what I might do. I don't know what I might. What I might. I don't know what I might. What I might. Don't know what I might do. I need the dollar is what I need. I need the dollar is what I need. What am I? I need the dollar is what I need. What am I? I need the dollar, don't know what I might do. I I need the dollar, dollar, dollar is what I need. If I share with you my story, won't you share your dollar with me? What am I? What am I? What am I? What am I? I don't know what am I? What am I? What am I? Don't know what am I? Don't know what am I? Do. Thank you. Beatboxing makes you very thirsty. Woohoo! Okay, so around this time, I entered a talent competition, purely just beatboxing, and I was spotted by a producer, and she invited me to her studio. When I arrived, she asked me if I sang. I said only in my bedroom, and she asked me to sing something for her. I'd never sang to someone so intimately before. I was really nervous. I played the guitar, and I sang and beatboxed Amy Winehouse's F Me Pumps. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear. She said I had a good voice and a good tone, and that was that. We started working together for the next 4 years. We wrote 2 albums worth of songs together. She was developing me as an artist. She put a live band around me, and for the first time since I was a Spice Girl obsessed 8-year-old, I was doing what I've always wanted to do but been too scared to. I was writing my own songs and performing them. I had a band. We did a few gigs, and in the early days I used to come off stage feeling awful. I really had no confidence in my singing voice whatsoever. I was so used to having an impact on people with my beatboxing, the party trick that never failed to impress, but when I sang I felt vulnerable. It was like a bearing of my soul that took me a really, really long time to get used to. But I got over my fear with practice. I practiced my scales and my songs every day religiously, and my voice got stronger. I did more gigs, and eventually it all just got easier. So practice makes perfect, feel the fear and do it anyway. They're generic sayings, but you know, there's truth in them. So long story short, after 4 years, it's 2016, I'm now 27 and I've never released a single. That's like ancient, isn't it, in pop music age. I'm an old woman, I've put no music out and I've been in development this whole time. And shit hits the fan. Oh, I just swore. Am I allowed to swear? Yeah. And shit hits the fan, big time. My Loop Station cover of Banks, a Banks song, had made it onto SBTV. It was a huge YouTube platform, and I had a couple of feature pieces in the Guardian and the Evening Standard for my one-woman show that I was touring at the time. It was all completely separate to what we were doing in the studio, but I guess she started to see that I was gaining traction as an artist and wanted to make things official between us. So suddenly contracts are getting involved, suddenly lawyers are involved, and I see this person's true intentions and I'm not comfortable with them at all. Terms which meant that I could never write with anyone else except her. Also that she, as a producer with no experience in management, wanted to be my manager, as well as have the rights to all the songs we wrote, as well as be in debt to her financially for a lot of money for the 4 years she'd been developing me. We'd never discussed any of this. I was totally naive, totally dumbfounded. So here was someone I idolised, spoke to on the phone every day, saw as my friend, my mentor, a mother figure, someone who helped me through breakups and gave me advice, who I saw as a role model. So it was crushing for all of that to fall apart. I went through a year-long legal battle, which cost me a lot of money, which I didn't have, in which I eventually had no choice but to walk away from all the songs, walk away from this intense, all-consuming and, in hindsight, very unprofessional working relationship. And I'm left with nothing. No songs, no relationships in the industry. I'd also just been dumped by my girlfriend, so it was probably one of the hardest years of my life. So I was ready to walk away from music and straight girls altogether. Well, I realised for those 4 years in that studio, I wasn't really songwriting. I was a puppet. I'd not found my own voice. I was so inexperienced that I didn't have the confidence to put my own ideas forward in the room. I was essentially singing someone else's songs. They were her songs. So when it all finished, I honestly didn't know if I could do it on my own. But there was only one way to find out. So I grieved, I picked myself back up again, and I connected with my band member to be my producer. And I said, fuck it, I'll try this thing on my own. And in 2017, I finally put out my debut single, which is called Medusa, which was written specifically about this producer, who used to call herself Medusa the producer. And to this day, it's still my most successful song on Spotify, with almost 250,000 streams. But more importantly, it was confirmation that I didn't need her or anyone else to be an artist. It was a reminder that I always had a voice within me. I just hadn't been in the right environment for it to flourish. I hadn't anywhere near reached my potential, and I needed to go through all that pain in order to realise it. So the whole experience was a blessing in disguise. It turns out it was the best, worst year of my life. I also met a new straight girl who is now my wife. So, you know, never say never, guys. So this song was the mark of a new beginning, and I will always hold it close to my heart. And it sounds like this. Okay, put the old headphones on. Falling to the floor, your true colours can't fool me no more. Medusa, guess I should've known. Look in your eyes could turn me into stone. I'm not petrified. Venom on your tongue darkens your smile, but I'm not gonna run. I stand alone. You're losing control, turning it all into a war. I stand alone. Snakes in your head, they talk to me. You're not playing fair, just set me free. Guess I should've known. Panic on your face starts to show. Eyes turning black, hardens your gaze. There's no going back. I stand alone. You're losing control, turning it all into a war. I stand alone. I stand alone. With you I'll never learn. I'm standing on my own. Time for that bridge to burn. With you I'll never learn. I'm standing on my own. Time for that bridge to burn. I stand alone. I stand alone. I stand alone. Thank you. So since the release of that single, I've independently released 4 EPs and 6 singles, I think. I had my songs played on Radio 1, 6 Music, played Glastonbury, had Spotify editorial playlists, live sessions with Redbull, features in the Metro, etc., etc. And it all tastes so much sweeter knowing that I got it from the songs that I had written with my words. contacts that I'd hustled with my time, PR companies that I'd paid with my money. It's very, very hard doing it all alone, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I fantasize about getting discovered by a big fat cat at a label, giving me loads of money, and they do all the marketing and all the boring admin stuff for me. But I know deep down that's not what I want, because with that comes expectations, opinions, deadlines, targets, constant touring, and ultimately control over my creativity. And knowing that all the success I have today has been down to my own hard work and talent is the best feeling in the world. You can't put a price on owning your own songs and having a control over your career. So, part 3, overcoming my fear of tech. Back to 2017, I've released my first single, and I've officially transitioned from solo beatboxer to a singer-songwriter. So I start performing my original songs live, and I slowly start to edge my way into using electronic sounds on stage. In 2018, I start working with a DJ in my live set, so he controlled the backing tracks and triggered stems and sounds while I beatboxed and sang. It was great, but when I started getting booked for solo gigs, or he couldn't make a gig, and it was just me and my loop station doing all vocal a cappella versions, I suddenly felt like my sets were seriously lacking some oomph. So I wanted to take the fuller sound that I had with him and replicate it solo. And I was jealous of all the buttons they had to press. I wanted more buttons. So for the first time, I started performing with a backing track. So I took out some of the drums so that I could replicate it with Beatboxing Live, and I uploaded it onto the loop station as a one-shot. So that basically means you press play and it goes to the end. There's no stopping it. And it was a good idea initially. I thought I'd cracked it, but I quickly realised that I couldn't sync up the backing track to any of my live loops. So I had to have near perfect timing when I was performing. It also meant when I was learning how to perform a new song, I couldn't stop the track and work it out. I had to wait for it to end and then go back to the beginning. So it was a very long-winded process. I bought myself a little sampler, an Akai one, MPX16 I think it was, and it had some samples in it. So it meant that I could now play the bass and loop it live, which was much more fun, more interesting. And it meant I didn't have to rely on having a DJ there every time I wanted to perform my songs, as they sounded on the record. It gave me more freedom, more control over my sound, and more diversity, as I eventually could work out 4 different versions of my live setup that I could suggest to promoters and bookers. So I had 4 different vibes with 4 different price tags. You can have me solo, with a DJ, with a guitarist, or as a full band. And I would advise all singers to find the means, well, all singers who don't play their own instrument, to find the means to do their songs solo, especially in the early days when you can't afford to pay other musicians, and you can just be more self-sufficient. And you can get a really basic loop station. Roland do one that just has the 2 channels. It's a great place to start. So it's now 2020, lockdown happened, and as you know, everything turned to live streaming. And that was a whole new learning curve for me. I basically now had to learn how to be a sound engineer if I wanted to do any gigs for the next 2 years. So I took a deep breath. I spoke to some people who knew some things, and I was advised to get myself a mixer so that I could have more control over the sound coming from my machines into the ears of the audience. So that's usually someone else's job when I do gigs. But again, being thrown in at the deep end and having some kind mates who could advise me helped me through. It confused the hell out of me in the beginning, and I had some awful live streams. Don't know if anyone can feel my pain. That ended in tears. My EP launch was meant to be in a real venue in June, but I ended up doing it online to a paying audience, and I had to cancel it after the first song because there was just no sound. So that was like full tears. But I slowly got the hang of it. And it was another step towards self-sufficiency and empowerment as an artist, and also as a woman in tech. And yes, the ironing board had to get bigger for the mixer. But now I had a conundrum. With my roots as a live looper, I didn't want to just sing to a backing track. I felt like I'd made a step forward sonically, but a step backwards as a live performer. I never wanted to have a laptop on stage, so I got this machine, which is an MPC-1. And I took advantage of the time I had in lockdown to transfer all my songs and samples from my loop station and sampler onto my MPC and relearn how to perform them live. It was a big job that I'd been putting off for a long time. So while everyone rearranged their cutlery drawers and repainted their houses, I, along with other musicians, got geeky, and I relearned how to perform my entire back catalogue on a new machine. So now everything is perfectly in time. It's all MIDI synced up. The transition from one song to the next is much smoother. The old Akai sampler, every time I wanted to go to a new song, it would literally take a minute to 2 minutes. So I got really good at learning to chat in between songs, but it was a bit boring for the audience eventually. And I'm now able to have backing tracks, trigger samples, and produce my own music all within this one piece of hardware. And I have more shiny buttons to press, which is very satisfying. So it wasn't until 2021 that I finally felt ready to perform with this new setup. And I did my first live stream gig in the spring, and then my first public performance in the summer. So this is all still relatively new for me. And then my DJ moved to Newcastle, and my guitarist moved to Chippenham. So I had no band left, and I had to find a new band. Luckily, I found a local drummer in southeast London. We've got a couple of gigs under our belt. So as you may have gathered, a big part of being an artist is learning to adapt. So it's 2022, and it would be nice to end this speech by saying that I have now conquered all my fears and all my insecurities have thus disappeared. But unfortunately, that will never be true. Artists are riddled with insecurity. We also have big egos. Don't get me wrong, you have to believe you're good enough in order to step on stage and make people listen in the first place. But a mixture of ego and insecurity is the perfect balance and never-ending cycle of an artist's inner mind. So my newest insecurity for 2022 is production, making my own tracks. Not just writing the lyrics, but wanting to make the music of my own songs too. To be able to confidently call myself a producer. So with this machine, I was able to overcome that fear somewhat. In lockdown, I was commissioned by the BBC with my partner, now wife, to create a short film. Jade applied and said in the application that I would do all the music for the film. I would never have put myself forward for that alone, but she believed in me, and we got selected. So we had to make a bloody film. So I got thrown in at the deep end once again. Turns out I did a good job, as you mentioned earlier, won a couple of awards, which was really nice. And it was a great reminder not to give in to your inner critic. And look what happens when you say yes, even if you are forced into it by someone else. And that gave me the confidence-ish to call myself a producer, although that's one I'm still working on. So that's it. My journey from learning my first beat on the beach as an awkward teenager to standing here in front of you now, calling myself a singer-songwriter, beatboxer, producer. It took almost 20 years for me to get to this point, and I still have a long way to go and new fears to overcome. But as long as I keep actively fighting against my comfort zone, my imposter syndrome, taking up space as a woman in a male-dominated industry, and as long as I keep challenging myself to be brave, stay curious, and always remember the joy of the process and the fun of creating, then I'll keep going. And I, as a kid who didn't grow up in a musical family, had no musical training, ended up being a professional beatboxer and living as a full-time artist, can now hopefully inspire others. I had and have no women to look up to in the generation above for guidance, inspiration, or comfort as a beatboxer. So Belle and I and a handful of others are acutely aware of our responsibility to stick around and be role models for the younger generation. I'm sure you've heard this quote lots by Marianne Edelman Wright, you can't be what you can't see. So hopefully now we can be something for others to see. Who knows? Maybe we'll stick around long enough to enter Britain's Got Talent as the UK's first beatboxing grannies. They keep asking. I keep pushing them away. So I'm going to perform a couple more songs for you, and then we're going to do a Q&A. I wanted to end on one of my favourite quotes from dancer and choreographer Martha Graham about living life as an artist. There is a vitality, a life force, a quickening that is translated through you into action, and there is only one of you in all time. This expression is unique, and if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, not how it compares with other expression. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly, to keep the channel open. You do not even have to believe in yourself or your work. You have to keep open and aware directly to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open. No artist is pleased. There is no satisfaction whatsoever at any time. There is only a queer, divine dissatisfaction, a blessed unrest that keeps us marching and makes us more alive than the others. Woo. So, now I'm going to perform two one was BBC introducing Radio 1 Track of the Week in 2018. I'm going to cling on to that forever. Though Radio 1 isn't the pinnacle, guys. It's called Running Underwater. Walking in a daze, trying to escape, but you're only lonely. Heartbeats on the floor, trapped behind a door that you only show me. Building up your prison walls. If this is a war, what you fighting for? Hold on to someone doesn't exist. Told ya you're running underwater. I don't wanna fall in deeper. I don't need ya. Your love is fever. Trying to keep you out my mind, but you ain't getting tired till you own me, own me. Pretend that I don't care, but I'm running out of air. Don't control me, hold me. Building up your prison walls. If this is a war, what you fighting for? Hold on to someone doesn't exist. Told ya you're running underwater. I don't wanna fall in deeper. I don't need ya. Your love is fever. Awkwardly fade out so no one notices the ending. Okay, time for one more. This is not using the MPC at all. It's just back to my beatboxing roots. It's just on this machine, and it's a UK garage mashup of all my favourite UK garage songs. Sounds like this. me so much joy. You're sweet like chocolate. When your love is pouring like the rain and I close my eyes and it's gone again. When will I get the chance to say I love you? I pretend that you're already mine and my heart ain't breaking every time I look into your
Rewind. When the crowd say doink, select different wind. When the crowd say doink, select different wind. When the crowd say doink, select different wind. When the crowd say doink, select door.
So now it's the time to do your thing. Let the melody carry the swing. All that I want is for you to get on down, so you can feel the music all around. Cause you got to make the body move, you got to let the body groove. Make the body move, you got to, do you really like it? Make the body move, you got to, is it wicked? Make the body move, you got to, do you really like it? Make the body move, you got to, is it wicked? 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 Is it What you laughing at? 21 seconds. 21 seconds. 21 seconds. 21 seconds.
That's it. Thank you very much. Woohoo.
Okay, great. Can I nick your lapel mic for a minute?
This one?
Yeah, you might be forced to respond through this microphone if that's cool.
Okay, fine.
I couldn't get the other one to work. Thank you so much for that incredible performance, demo, talk, hybrid joy. It was absolutely fabulous. And we're so lucky to have you, really. Right, so I'm not going to put the room on the spot just yet. But if you have questions brewing, then get them ready. I have a couple here. So are there any milestones in your career that you didn't get a chance to squeeze into that talk that you're particularly proud of?
Yeah, probably my TEDx talk.
Ooh.
Because TED Talks are scary. There's certain things in your career you look back on, and when you're scared of doing something else, you look back on that and go, yeah, but I did that, so I'll be all right. That's why it's quite good to do scary things, even just for that sort of safety net, and go, yeah, but I did a TED Talk. I did it in front of 2,000 people at the Royal Albert Hall? No, the Royal Festival Hall.
Still a pretty good Royal Hall.
One of the Royal Halls.
I'm just going to throw that out there.
And I was actually asked to be a performer to provide some light entertainment in between some quite heavy talks. And she said in the email, unless there's something you want to talk about, just quite casually. And I don't know what came over me. I was obviously in quite a confident mood. I was at a certain point in my cycle. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to talk about misogyny in the beatboxing world.
Wow.
And once I'd agreed to it, I sort of had to do it. So that to me is a huge milestone, because I would never normally put myself up for something that scary.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. That's amazing. And people can find that on YouTube now.
Yes. It's called something really clever like Being a Female Beatboxer. Let's come up with a title really quickly.
Amazing. If you had one thing or piece of advice that for people to take away from this session, what do you feel like it would be?
Based on the talk I just did, life's too short. We're all going to die anyway, so just do the things that are scary. Do you know what I mean? Like, nothing's that big. It's always way bigger in your head than it is. Most of the time, people aren't even listening. Like,
I mean, we really hope that they are.
No, but they are. But no one's going to be listening intently for the whole hour. Like, people dip in and out with that. So you can spend time going like, oh my God, I'm terrified. But we're all scared of each other. And you know what I mean? Don't be scared. Do that thing you've been scared of doing.
Okay, that's cool. Do that thing you've been scared of doing. That's a pretty good piece of advice. Okay, does anyone in the room have anything? Oh, yeah.
What's the most special thing for you about beatboxing as opposed to like more traditional, I guess, traditional methods, like, I don't know, like your MPK, is that right?
The MPC,
MPC, or other instruments.
I guess it's unique, and I never no one really knows what's going on up here. Really. Some people do. This audience probably does.
I mean, we just put a camera on it.
Yeah, exactly. You guys know, but I sometimes think, why do I bother spending so much time learning this when people don't really get it? But with beatboxing, there's like some sort of instant connection. People go, oh, wow, that's a human voice, but it sounds like a record kind of thing. And I think we have some sort of guttural, emotional, ancient connection to the voice. And it's really fun when I beatbox. Even though sometimes I'm a bit bored of it because I've been doing it for so long, I forget that every time I beatbox, there's always not even just one person. The majority of the audience have never seen it before. So the fact that I get to like be people's first times experiencing something is actually really special. And there aren't many people that can say that, I guess, unless there's some really quirky instrument.
I mean, people do invent instruments every so often, but it's not like an everyday thing. Most people tend to pick up an instrument people are familiar with.
Yeah. So I guess the fact that it's so unique, although not everyone loves it. Some people really hate beatboxing, which I find quite funny. But I think it depends on the context. Like if your only experience of beatboxing is seeing some teenager with a hood up with a really bad amp while you're trying to shop and you're just hearing like yo yo yo, you're gonna be like, oh, I hate beatboxing. But if you see Beardy Man or Reaps One or Shlomo, who are like putting beatboxing into new contexts, then I think you can appreciate it. Yeah,
cool, amazing. Anybody else? Yes.
So yeah, the question of new context is really interesting. I work in film composing, and there's a lot of soundtracks at the moment that are called handmade. So they have choral work, but then they have kind of vocal chants and shrieks and shouts and things over the top, and it's kind of like a new way of using ancient ways of using the voice. And I wondered if there was any other genre of music that you'd thought of using beatboxing techniques with.
Well, I basically make alternative pop music. But it's more people employing me to be a beatboxer on their stuff. I haven't personally gone into any new genres, but there's still time. I worked with Anna Meredith on her beatbox concerto for beatboxer. Yeah. Is that what it's called? Yeah. And there were 5 of us beatboxers, and I can't read music, so I had to learn a 17-minute score just by listening and like writing my own notation. But that was cool, like seeing it written down with the musical notes and then it being like buh and psh and wee, like no one has any notation. Yeah. So I think that could be a new area, like actually notating beatboxing. I performed with clog dancers, ballet dancers. So I worked with Akram Khan and Sylvie Guillem, and with an Indian percussionist, a violinist, and I was just sort of doing screeches and animal sounds and stuff like that. But yeah, whoever these composers are, get them to employ me. I love screeching for money.
I think you just created a very effective advertisement for yourself there. Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I was just wondering, what do you think the landscape is like for younger women coming into beatboxing now? And is it different to your experience when you were younger?
Yeah, I guess just by the very fact that there's more of us, it could be less intimidating. There's a whole debate that's been going on about whether there should be a female category at the UK Champs and a male category, or there's a couple of beatboxers that have just come out as non-binary, so that's something to address. But there is something for saying, as a non-male beatboxer being pushed into that environment, it's really intimidating and really scary and puts a lot of people off. So that was kind of why they introduced the female category in the first place, was to give women a confidence boost and go, okay, I'm surrounded by other women, it's okay. So I don't know where I stand on that debate. But the very fact that younger girls can look up and say, oh, I saw Grace do it, I saw Belle do it, And we try and keep the conversation open. If there's any new beatboxers emerging, we're like, hey, you, have a chat with us. There's no sort of formal place to go and learn beatboxing. There's the Beatbox Academy in Battersea Arts Centre. But apart from that, apart from paying for private lessons, there aren't many spaces to go and learn. I know they're introducing it as a module in Guildhall, I think, which should be interesting. But it's about creating safe spaces, isn't it, for young girls to feel inspired. But I think it's better. There's still a long, long way to go.
Cool. Anybody else? Or any other random questions? You are allowed to ask. Oh, there's two.
Is there any parallel or like collab opportunity with like scat singing, or also I was going to ask about the Eastern like vocalizing of sitar lines and stuff like that?
So if you think about the very beatboxing comes under a bigger umbrella term of vocal percussion, and that started in the 1920s with the barbershop quartets, guys just going cha 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 cha, and then you get Ella Fitzgerald and all these jazz singers scatting, which to me is early forms of beatboxing because they're imitating saxophones essentially. There's one YouTube video called One Note Samba with Ella Fitzgerald where she just goes off on one, and like it starts off like like traditional scatting, and then she starts going and it gets really like crazy and guttural. It's so good. And that is beatboxing to me. I definitely see the parallels there. Not sure about the sitar singing stuff. Maybe I just don't listen to enough of that. But I guess it's the same. But when I was talking about the Indian percussionists that I toured with, they have to learn the rhythms with their mouths before they can learn it with their hands, right? I think it's called vocal bowls, BOLS. So Pratap, he was called, was teaching me this. And I was like, oh my God, that's beatboxing, but like with more complicated rhythms. And I guess that's been around for probably hundreds of years. So yeah, beatboxing is just, I hate this word, but the urban form of vocal percussion, I suppose. What makes it urban? Because you learn it on the streets, I suppose. The mean streets of Devon. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Ooh. It's all right. Everything's fine. I've just tripped over a wire. Anyway.
Okay, really basic question, but why do you have two different microphones?
One for beatboxing, straight into the loop station, and one so I can have some nice reverb on. You do have reverb on this machine, so I used to just have one microphone, and I would beatbox, and then I'd have to press, there's input effects here, every time I sang, I would have to press the reverb button, and it just became one button too many to press. So I thought if I could have a permanent microphone, reverbed for singing, and one EQ'd for beatboxing, it just sonically sounds better. Yeah.
Cool. Any last questions? The stream has got a bit shy. Okay. I have a last question, which is, where would you like to take your music next? Or have you thought about this?
I'm at a bit of a stage where I'm like, I don't know if there's any other completely DIY independent artists out there, but it's a schlep. Like, I've spent so much money putting songs out, and I love it, but it's a point where I'm like not really getting a return on that. So I don't think I'm going to be putting any music out for a while. I want to take a break. So I'm really enjoying just doing more talks, and the fact that I can sing that song Medusa and like give you a whole lead up to it and give you context is really nice. I don't often get to have that at a gig. So I'm enjoying talking and just experimenting, and I'm tentatively working towards a debut album, but that could come out in 5 years. Who knows? I'm not putting any pressure on myself, basically.
That sounds very healthy.
Yeah, I don't want to collaborate with more people because that's fun, and it's about remembering that it's fun.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much, Grace. You've been an absolute joy. I'm going to walk over here with the little microphone and say, yay, thanks. Okay, so I'll step over here. Thank you so much, everyone who has come tonight, and thank you everybody on the stream who's shown up. It's been a delight to have you. We've had lots of little applause kind of icons, and the stream says thank you so much for this presentation. For those who are just discovering We Move, where have you been? We are 23 sessions deep by now, but I would like to invite you to check out our YouTube channel because you will find every single session there. There is a whole playlist dedicated to We Move sessions, all these wonderful free sessions that have been sponsored by Arts Council and also supported by Focusrite. Thank you both. So go and check them out. They're free resources. Why would you not? Loads and loads of beautiful sessions focused on music and tech and all kinds of wonderful things. Mostly made possible by, as I say, Arts Council and Focusrite. Focusrite. There we go. So yeah, go check them out. We have a couple more still to go. You will find out about them on musichackspace.org. And if you haven't stumbled into that yet, go and have a look because there's loads of courses and resources and all kinds of wonderful things available over there. And we hope to see you at the next one.
Don't you need to thank someone?
I did twice.
I wasn't listening. Told you no one listens.
Don't worry, it's all good. So everybody have a good evening, and we'll see you at the next one. Bye. And now